Hi all. Today we are going to see all amendments which are applicable for our May 2021 exam and onwards. So there are some chota mota changes in your paper 4, that is in economics as well as in BCK. So what are those chota mota changes? What are the topics that has been deleted and what are the topics that has been newly introduced? In economics, if at all we need to speak, there is no any kind of a topic that has been newly introduced, but the same topics has been changed little and it has been explained in a different way, and there are only some minute changes in economics. But kindly remember this, in case of BCK, chapter 3 and chapter 4 has got many changes. Chapter 3, especially the data, CEOs, CFOs, the awards, all those elements will be keep on changing every now and then whenever the institute starts revising their material. So obviously the chapter 3, that is a company overview, might be the CEO, CFO, what are the awards that the company has got, what are the achievements of a company, what is the latest takeovers, what are the latest business ventures they are entering into. So these are the changes which is usually there 20 to 30 percentage in chapter 3. Except chapter 3, this time there is another one more changes, that is in case of chapter 4. I can say chapter 4 of BCK, I'm repeating it again, chapter 4 of BCK has gone under a major changes. What are those major changes? We will see it in today's class. But first let me complete this economics part, which has hardly some minute changes, wherein I consider these are the areas where you can expect a question because of the changes. Now, which are the changes applicable to us? See here, in case of a chapter 1, that is introduction to economics, wherein when we explained different types of an economy, we say capitalistic economy, socialistic economy and mixed economy. Superb. In that there is a small minute change or one new addition which has been included in a socialistic economy. That is, every time we used to say an example, once upon a time USSR, now the presently it is called as a Russia, that was an example of a socialistic economy. At present there is no nation which is purely following socialistic culture. Superb. But we never said what was the duration in which Russia used to follow or USSR used to follow the socialistic economy. Now they have included the date from 1917 until 1990. This is the duration where Russia, that is USSR, was following the socialistic economy. And whenever we say the present examples of socialistic economy, there is no nation which is following purely socialistic. But China and Cuba are completely following the patterns of socialistic, and almost North Korea was under a dictatorship. Now, along with China and Cuba, there is one more nation which is given as an example from your material, that is Vietnam. Now, your institute material says even Vietnam is also following the cultures and practices of socialistic economy. So these are the only two changes which have been appeared, and we can expect a question from these area. Remember, along with China and Cuba, now even Vietnam is also included, and USSR was following a socialistic culture, that is purely socialistic culture from 1917 to 1990, and at present there is no nation in the entire world which is purely following socialistic economy. Now, when it comes to the demand chapter, now whenever we say the exceptions to the law of demand, conspicuous consumption, defense goods, conspicuous necessaries, unlike the same, we every time used to explain something called as a Veblen effect, snob effect. More than Veblen and effect and snob effect, we always used to take one more beautiful concept called as demonstration effect. That is, demand for a commodity is dependent on usage of another person. If you remember, in the class I used to give that example. Sir, my friend purchased an iPhone, even I should purchase it. Sir, my next home uncle purchased a new LED TV, even we should purchase it. Like this, the demand for a product is determined by the usage of other party. Those goods are called as demonstration effect. Now, this demonstration effect or a bandwagon effect, we also call it as a bandwagon effect. This was developed by James Dusenberry. This is the person's name, that is an economist who introduced this concept called as bandwagon effect. His name was not specified earlier in the old material, but now they have specified his name. So there are some chances of asking a question. The bandwagon effect or the demonstration effect was developed by Dash, Adam Smith, JB Say, J.S. Mill, James Dusenberry. There are chances, so why to neglect it? So kindly do remember who was the person who developed a demonstration effect, James Dusenberry. Next. Under the determinants of demand, if you remember, I taught you a shortcut, PITCAT PC. Price, income, tax, climatic condition, advertisement, taste and preferences, population. C&S stands for complementary and substitute goods. Now, there is one more point, or I also say that for an existing point, there is one more additional information which has been included. Now, under this other determinants, in your institute material, if at all you are studying, the same determinants of demand, there is a last point called as other determinants. Now, for this other determinants, there is one more point which has been added, that is called as government policies and regulations. Now, what exactly does this government policies and how government is going to regulate any kind of business operation through which how it impacts the demand? No doubt, boss, the most important thing is a tax structure. And my government is going to restrict few commodities manufacturing or few commodities sale. Why? Because they are considered as socially undesirable goods and services. So this is the another point which has been included. So there is a chances of asking a question. Socially undesirable goods and services are restricted by a government, and higher tax rates are levied on if at all we want to sell them. I used to give this example in case of alcohol, in case of tobacco products. Every single time in a budget, the prices will go up. Why? Because the tax rates have been increased for them. So they are called as socially undesirable goods and services which are harmful for a society. Still, few goods and services are sold because there is a huge demand for that commodity. So in case of such socially undesirable goods and services, wherein the tax rates will be high, even though if at all we are increasing a tax rate, sir, there are still customers who are purchasing a commodity. What to do with it, sir? Yes, boss, your question is right. My people are purchasing that. In order to discourage the demand for those commodity, we are increasing the tax prices, and my government is restricting, and you can see that especially during the schools and college area, 100 feet or let me say 100 meters from the college distance, you cannot sell the tobacco, or there cannot be an alcohol selling shop. Like this, we are discouraging many kinds of socially undesirable goods and services, not only just in case of an alcohol or maybe a tobacco products, even in case of those commodity which is considered as harmful, which is considered as the most dangerous substances for the human health. So especially the government policies and the regulations of government policies, kindly keep this in your mind. In such a cases, these are exceptions to law of demand. Even though in case of increase in tax rates, still there is a demand for a commodity, wherein I cannot say that because of restrictions there will be a reduction. Yes, boss, to some extent there will be a reduction, but still I can say there is exceptions. Next. Whenever we speak about the demand function, there was an equation. What is that? My quantity demanded is equals to function of price of a related good, that is complementary substitute good, income, taste and preferences, advertisement. In short, PITCAT PC, each and everything was included in our equation, the earlier equation. But now the new equation has only said as quantity demanded for a commodity is a function of price of a commodity, income capacity, that is income of a consumer, and price of a related goods. Only these three things are given in your material. Still, there is not such a big change, but still I am making sure that these are the equations that has been changed. There is a chances of asking it, and more than an equation, there is also one more equation. I can also call it as a slope of a curve and variant intercept. These are the two elements which are given in your market demand curve. Now earlier it was very old. Whenever the concept we used to study under CPT, this concept was existing. But now again they have taken it back, wherein any demand curve for it matter, the demand curve equation is derived as Q is equals to A minus B of P. That is independent factor, dependent factors, and slope of a curve. Especially this B is called as a slope of a curve. So kindly remember this equation. Q is equals to A minus B of P. P represents price, Q represents quantity demanded. Now here A represents vertical intercept and B represents slope of a curve. These are the chota mota additions included in your demand concept, and there are many few things which has been taken out. For the taken out part, let me say the deleted part, you need not to worry much. Only those new things which are included, these are the chota mota things included. Now let me go forward in case of a consumer behavior topic. Now whenever we see about assumptions of consumer behaviors, especially assumptions of marginal utility, to be precise, now assumptions of marginal utility is mainly concentrating based on LDMU concepts. Now usually the assumptions wherein the income of a customer remains constant, all the other factors are considered as constant, we are ignoring complementary goods or we are ignoring substitute goods. Yes boss, that was existing, but now more than that, we are also mainly concentrating on money as a measuring rod. We are ignoring complementary goods and substitute goods. All the factors are remaining constant. I can say price, income, taste and preferences, population, all those factors which will affect for the desire and taste of a customers, those factors are considered as constant. Now basically my assumptions of marginal utility analysis is concentrating on assumptions of LDMU. Commodity should be continuously consumed, it has to be homogeneous in nature, wherein all those factors whichever we used to explain for LDMU concept, same LDMU assumptions are considered as marginal utility assumptions. So kindly keep that in mind. These are the only chota changes which I saw in your institute material. And now when we come to the supply unit, there is one more addition which has been made, only the graph part. The concept was already existing, but as a faculty we need to take some extra effort to make you people understand. But now the institute has come out with a same to same graph to make it more clear. Sometimes especially from this area there was a questions asked, but the students used to get confused. Sir, no sir, I didn't see any graph, such kind of a graph, or we could not able to study anything. Boss, it was like an indirect way of asking a question. That's it, nothing else. See here, in case of a supply concept, the only thing which you need to understand is market equilibrium and social efficiency. Sir, already we discussed market equilibrium, right? Yes, boss, we have discussed market equilibrium. What is that? Whenever the total demand is equals to total supply. So this is the point of market equilibrium. Now, when we explained a consumer surplus in the class, what was the meaning of consumer surplus? Whatever extra worth of satisfaction that a customer derives from a given increase in stock of anything. Superb. That is potential price minus actual price. That was the concept. We already know that, and we also know that consumer surplus was also called as a welfare triangle. If you remember, we have plotted a graph like this. Especially this region, over and above your actual price. This was the actual price line, AP, and this was the potential price, PP. Now, over and above the actual price, whatever the regions are there, this shaded region, this was called as consumer surplus. Same to same concept. Now, they are saying anything above the price line, anything above the price line and below the demand curve. Below the demand curve and above the price line is called as consumer surplus. Same to same concepts. Unlike the same, there is also something called as producer surplus. What is that producer surplus? Anything above supply line and below price line is called as producer surplus. Same concept was asked in a MCQ. Many students got confused. So this time, ICA has included a direct graph altogether, wherein market equilibrium, we know that it is also called as an industry equilibrium, and in case of a social efficiency, they have explained the concept of producer surplus, a new thing. Kindly do remember what is producer surplus. Sir, anything and everything above the supply line and below the price line is called as a producer surplus. What is consumer surplus? Above the price line and below the demand curve, that is called as consumer surplus. Here, producer surplus is a benefit derived by the producer by sale of a unit above and beyond the cost of production. It occurs when they receive prices more than the minimum price at which they are prepared to supply. Now I am prepared to supply at the specific supply line, but assuming I am selling more than the price what I was assuming that I need to sell. So that is a producer's surplus, and it represents the area above the supply curve and below the price line. So in short, whenever you are selling a commodity, whatever your expected price of supply, over and above which if you are supplying a commodity, then it is called as a producer's supply. The price which you are selling over and above the cost of production. So this was the chota mota changes which were applicable in your economics, and there are some deletions made in your cost of production and theory of production and theory of cost. Only some chota mota minute concepts are there, and especially the chapter 4 remains same and chapter 5 remains same. So these are the minute areas of changes which are there in your economics part. And I can say any one question you can expect from this, especially boss, I can expect from this area and this person's name, and this anyhow it is going to come. But this time they have included a graph, so I have explained this specific graph. Now after economics, let us move ahead with BCK. Now the major changes of BCK is in case of a chapter 4. Now if you remember in chapter 4, every single time whenever we used to study, we also explained what is government policies. After government policy, what is the policy making procedure? After that, law making procedures, and later on I used to give a brief history regarding the Indian economy, how before independence it was, after independence how it was, and later on we started facing a problem, then how the economic change process started to happen, And we also explained starting something called as FDI, FII, like there's many concepts, NRI, OCI, person of Indian origin, can invest up to 100% in India. All those in detailed explanations were there, but now completely removed. The entire chapter 4, what is the things which are retained is FDI, FII is retained, and few concepts of government policies are retained. What is that? Restrictive policy, regulatory policy, facilitating policies, all those three type of a government policies which are existing for a, let me say, a business benefits. Only those three elements or points are retained. FDI is retained, FII is retained. Other than this, my policy making process, law making process, economic change process, and the privatization is still existing. LPG concept, liberalization, privatization, globalization. In your old material, only the most importance was given and explanation was given for privatization. But now, all the three, liberalization, privatization, and globalization, all the three are explained in detail, and what exactly a policy refers to, what are the major concentrations of policy creation is given. But over there, the process of policy, problem identification, policy evaluation, policy adoption, all those elements, 5 important steps were there, and law making process, pre-legislative, legislative, post-legislative, scrapped. There's no more in your syllabus. And post-independence public policy, if you remember, I used to give these examples and all. India was suffering completely from a poverty. Almost 47% of population was poor, and hardly, let me say, 2% of the workforce was dependent on industry. 72% of workforce was dependent on agriculture. India started facing stagflation. All those related. There's not at all there. Now, what are the topics that is included in chapter 4? Have a look here. Now, at the very initial phase, they have given an overview what this chapter will be speaking about. Now, history sketch of a government policies in India. Ancient India, what was the policies we existed, and under the British rule, what was the policy existed, and after independence, what are the policies. Now, regarding ancient India, Arthashastra, which was written by Chalukya, all those emperors, what they used to follow, the same to same, even it was there in your old material. Now, under the British rule, now I used to explain, now I used to divide the Indian ages into 4 categories, if you remember, before 1947. Next, from 1947 till 1980. Next, 1980 to 1991. Next, from 1991 till present day, 2021. This is how I used to explain it. Same to same explanations, but now it is in a little different manner. After independence, we are taking more and more concepts now, but earlier we were also speaking before independence. But for the before independence part under the British rule, the only and only thing now the importance is given, that is for the zamindari system. Whatever the land reforms was existing, whatever the tax the government, let me say the Britishers used to collect for their benefit, only that part has been explained. But after independence, what India has faced a problem, and how 1991, this LPG concept, new economic policies were given more importance, after which we started explaining. And spectrum of government policies for business, how it is helpful for a business on the basis of scope, on the basis of impact, and later on liberalization, privatization, foreign direct investment concept, foreign institutional investment concept, and another OFDI is included, that is outwards foreign direct investment. In short, whenever we receive, that is inward foreign direct investment, IFDI, and not only just we are receiving, as Indian citizens, even we are investing in many nations in a form of foreign direct investment, that is called as outwards foreign direct investment. Now, inwards and outwards both are explained. Foreign institutional investment is remaining same. The only changes are many topics has been scrapped there, and now they have made entire chapter 4 easier. You need not to break your head much. Only the chota mota minute changes have been made in the chapter 4, but the entire chapter 4 has been revamped. Retainment is only 20%, changes are 80%. Here, let us start. Now, same to same, if you remember, there was one beautiful example given in your institute material, that Raman and Ali. Raman was a science student, Ali was a CA. Later on, what they happened between the taxation policies, patent rights, all the stories remains the same here. But now, historical framework, again, it was also existing, that Arthashastra, which was issued by a Chanukya, emperors, what they used to do, so Aristotle, that break your head. Now, under the British rule, you might get the question. Now, especially the zamindari system, which was wherein in order to collect the taxes on lands, see, that is concentrated here. See here, they introduced zamindari system to extract minimum revenue from the Indian peasants, means the small holders of an agricultural land. They introduced managing agency system through which it was possible for a handful of wealthy Britishers to build and concentrate various industries and business empires in India. Sometimes with assistance from the Indian partners, the British government of India just fulfilled the duty of a states in the maintenance of the interior order, defense and land, the Indian people, such blah blah blah. Understand this. Whatever this British system, that is for their welfare. Whatever the policy they came out, that was not benefiting to the population. Collect the revenue, land revenues. That was the only thing which explained indirectly in a most professional language. Now, after independence, let me repeat. I will just let me take some 5 minutes and let me just revise it for making sure that you people are understanding the new concepts. Now, what happened after India got its independence? Majority of wherein my whatever funds that I'm investing was completely used for eradication of. One way my government expenditures are more, another way my government revenues are less. Adding more fuel for a fire, majority of the population is dependent on agriculture. But know that if any nation has to progress, if any nation has to get developed, they need to industry. So we started to industries after independence, and we adopted something fixed economic policy after independence in India. Now at the time of capitalistic economy for say, and socialistic economy, which was followed by whom? Which was followed by SSR, 1916 to started following mixed economy. Whatever mixed economy concept we started following was not. I also said India adopted its constitution in 1950 and started in planning commission CI 5-year. For the namesake, we just said it as a mixed economy, existence of private and public partnership. Now, was after independence, the majority of the industries, wherever we wanted to concentrate, that is, wherever, in case of cement manufacturing, iron and steel, duty, whatever it might be, majority was in the hands of public entities. This private enterprises were hardly given customer industry. There was no freedom for a private enterprises. Majority were in the hands of public, that is, are completely reserved for enterprises, and these public enterprises wherein after 30 years hardly 1% capital income, and India started facing stagnation, lack of growth. These are the problems which now really need a solution for this. If not, India would have been declared as a bankrupt by end of 1990s. I explained this. As a last approach, India is asking a loan from IMF. The conditions is privatize, and let me come to 1991 later on. Now, after independence, what happened? What are the rules? Remember, if after independence of India in the year 1940, statement was 1950 industrial development and industrial is taken out, not given in 1950. Directly, they have given information regarding your 1956 industrial policy resolution. Importance is given. Whatever we started in the year 1950, 5-year plans that they have given regarding it, and we adopted the constitution in 19. And for the very first industrial policy was given in 1948, industrial policy resolution, in order to provide long-term industrial finance corporation, IFCI was established. Now those information are taken out there. Chota mota information. See here, in India since independence, after getting independence in India, that is a colonial rule ended, and charting business growth of India started to get, and they came to the first industrial policy in the year 1948, suggesting the urgent priority the government according to fulfill the industrial, business and economic growth. By concentrating more on industry, there will be a business growth as well as an economic growth. Now, preamble of the Constitution of India adopted in 1950 confirmed that the people that has got a freedom and recognition and right to carry on any business and trade as a fundamental right. Now we embarked on the very first 5-year economic plans in the year 1951 and the industrial policy resolution 1956. Now this is the important topic in your changes. Now wherein majority of the was completely de-reserved for government. Hardly some minute was given to the private sector, and for each and everything you should take a license. So those are the biggest problems of India. Same thing I've explained here, nothing else. Next, then we came to 1990. India was about declared as a bankrupt. 1991, then we adopted liberalization, privatization and globalization. What do you mean by this liberalization? India used to follow restrictive trade practices. We had complete negative things imports. We never used to support for international trade much. We were completely shutting the doors in order to protect my domestic nations from international competitions. Now you need to open your gates of India because you need to liberalize your policies. You have a complete restrictive trade practices. Now you need to liberalize them. Second one, privatization, wherein completely majority of the industries were de-reserved for a PSU, public sector undertakings. Now also make sure that you privatize them. If at all any private party is interested to come and take over them, let them come, let them take over. Also privatization, that is taking the controls from PSU to private, that is privatization. What is nationalization? From private to PSU, that is nationalization. Next, globalization, treating the entire globe as a one single market. Now there is no boundaries. Now any person can go abroad and he can do the business. Any foreign nations people or any foreign nation companies can come to India and they can start the business operations, and even the foreign investments were also supported. Now the comparison is given, that is after independence in the mid 50s what was the policies, and after 1990 after including LPG concept. Now nature of economic system, there was a mixed economy with the dominant for public sector. The major dominance was in the hands of PSU, but after 1990s majority of the policies were towards a capitalistic economy, private peoples. Now dominant institutions of economic governance, they were completely economically planned, but now it is market mechanism. Demand and supply will take care of the plans of an economy or how the economy is going to perform. But over there, complete my Planning Commission of India 5-year plans, they used to decide what to be done and what not to be done. Complete control was in the hands of a government. Now opening Orient, post economic policies was over there. Earlier we had something called as closed economic policy, restrictive trade practices, but now open economic policy towards globalization. Next, roles of government in business, acquiring, commanding heights through public sector undertaking, completely control under the PSU. But now state ownership of business as expecting privatization of public sector undertaking. Now even state ownership is existing, even government as PSU is also there, and also public sectors are also being given to some private enterprises. Roles of government in case of a private business, regulation, control. They used to regulate them. You should not do that. Only you should do this. Whatever I say, you should follow that. And they had a complete control. But now it is liberalized. So how it was earlier, how it is now, only the comparison is given in a new syllabus part. And now let me come to the spectrum of government policies. How exactly the policies are created. Earlier we had something called as public policies. What was the link, how the problem was identified, how the policy, who used to come out, what was the law making process, detailed was explained. But now scrap, simple, right from your incorporation, right from your dissolution, or might be insolvency and bankruptcy board, everything whatever related to the business, right from your start to right from your ending, entry as well as exit, every policies, what all the authorities which is coming under, who is a concerned person, how you need to follow, what are the rules and regulation, all those policies what we have created for the business purpose, they have explained it. See here, right from your registration, there are policies and regulations impacting business startup and business registration, registering the partnership firm or unincorporated or incorporate as a company, and environment clearances. You need to also take an environment clearance certificate stating that you are not harming any of the environment or you are not polluting it, and how we are conducting the business, conduct of business and dealings with customers, that is consumer laws are applicable. And now even in order to exit, insolvency and bankruptcy, that is right from you enter, registration part, right you exit, that is insolvency and bankruptcy or liquidation procedure, and environment clearance. What is the kind of business you are doing? What are the permissions to be taken? What are the policies that government has made? Those are explained. Now, over and above, vitaminium is important. Now, regarding vitaminium, we are concentrating more. Fiscal policy and monetary policy. What is this? I've already explained. Fiscal refers to all those government expenditures and government receipts. It is an anticipated expenditure of a government and anticipated receipt of a government in a single year. Those are called as fiscal. When it comes to the central bank of a nation, then it is called as a monetary policies. Monetary policies belongs to the central bank, RBI. Fiscal policy belongs to the government of India. These policies are completely macroeconomic management. They are micro, they are macroeconomic management as a nation as a whole. Now the economic policies of nation are explained with the terms to fiscal policies, that is government anticipated incomes and expenditure, and central banks policies regarding the interest rate, regarding the availability of money, demand and supply of money, complete RBI concepts in short. Now, with respect to the sector, agricultural sector, industrial sector, foreign trade investments, and FEMA concepts are there little, and was even the service sector. Now, completely based on sectoral wise, we are discussing it. The same information from 1956 to 1991, it was not appropriate. These PSUs were not performed properly. Now, how exactly the government has to come up with policies? Let me give a brief introduction regarding it. Now, let me take the realistic example. Recently, due to this coronavirus, now the government of India has announced compensatory funds in order to make sure that the economy is boosting. 1 lakh crore subsidized loan for industry purposes. Recently, Nirmala Sitharaman, Finance Minister of India, even Narendra, lockdown opening, that is 0.0, he announced a package stating that provide a loan subsidized states. Why? These are the concept where in order to boost an economy, what happens not only during this coronavirus, earlier during the financial crisis which occurred, the global financial crisis of 2008, recession, during those times the government of India has adopted some policies for the benefit of a society in order to boost the economy. Now let me explain, let me go little out of the topic to make sure that you people are understanding this. This is actually your CA inter concept, but let me explain it so that you can get a proper picture. Now there is a concept by name C plus I plus G plus X minus M. This is in short called as aggregate demand of an economy. Now C stands for consumption expenditure. I stands for investment expenditure. Who does this consumption expenditure? Household. Who does this investments? Business people, corporate people. Now comes a government expenditure. Even my government has also got some expenditure. Might be the policeman salary, the employee salary, military expenditure of infrastructure, economy, all those things. Even my government has got an expenditure. What happens? This pandemic. Let me take the realistic example. Now, sir, customers are also not having a income in their hand. They are getting half of the salary. Why? Because these investments are less, business activities are less. Now, when C and I becomes deficit, C and I becomes deficit. Now, it is a due to a government starts spending. What happens? Government starts spending more, pumps an economy. This concept is called as pump pricing. And pump pricing the concept which you will study in your now, not to worry about it. Now what happens when government start constructing any infrastructure like dams, bridges, now government outsource it. Obviously sir, government will call a tender, government will outsource business party to on behalf of government. Now what happens when government is spending, automatically I gets activated. When I gets activated, that is investments gets activated, business people gets activated, obviously they want employees to work. Obviously whenever the employees are hired, obviously they will get the income and they will start spending the money on purchasing goods and services. Now BCK chapter 1 introduction, wherein every particular customer has got a human wants. Let me say humans have got a wants, unlimited wants. How do we satisfy them? By consuming those goods and services. In order to consume those goods and services, I should get income. With the same income, we also create a savings. So this consumption expenditure is based on the demand concept. So automatically when I gets activated, C also gets activated. Now when C and I both got deficit, Now government's role is to push the so my government expenditures has to increase. Now that is the main point. Have a look here. Wherein my government, see here, during the economic downturn due to virus or during the world economic crisis of 2018, as a government, need to start boosting an economy. So all those, what are the policies that are taken, what benefits that we are giving to the society, star economy. Now, not only that, whenever any government is creating any policy, it has an impact with five important elements. How many important elements? Five important. Now, those elements are GDP, inflation, tax rates, interest rates, and exchange rates. These are the five most significant macroeconomic elements which every time changes whenever the policies changes. Now, what does this GDP say? Suppose if a nation's GDP is progressing, obviously, sir, the economy will develop. What is the GDP, gross domestic product? That is, in a one single year, what is the total value of goods and services produced within a nation? Suppose if the economy is performing properly, automatically GDP goes down. If all your work regularly, then GDP 7% because of this coronavirus. Not only now, all sign always make that whenever has to probe. So increase. Next, inflation. There should or less should inflation. What is this inflation? Sir, obviously, whenever there is excess money supply in an economy, the general of an economy is no doubt there has to be a minimum stating every, or let me say every successive years, there will be an increase in prices. There should be a constant or smaller portion of increase. Suppose if all of a sudden price shoots up, sir, prices are damn very high. That is hyperinflation. Example I've already given. How Zimbabwe started facing hyperinflation. What was the major disadvantage of it? Now even the inflation in a nation should also increase slowly, rapidly. Next comes the tax rates. If the tax rates are very high, businessman is interested, no business person is interested to come and produce more. If government is supportive, government policies are supportive, tax rates are less, even I am interested to produce more and sell it in an economy. If your tax rates are high, automatically I will not produce. When I not producing, GDP of a nation will drop. Next comes the interest rates. Whenever I go and take a loan, if what all your interest rates like high, interested, the interest rates are less. If the interest rates are acceptable to take a loan, then I will obviously take a loan and then I will produce the services. Tax rates and interest rates, these are the two main important elements which government has to always control. See, this government expenditure has got these two elements: taxation policy and interest rate policy. Understand this concept. This is the main agenda why I am coming little out of the topic and explaining you. Suppose, let me take the concept of inflation and deflation. How my government expenditures is going to help in order to control an inflation or deflation? Through their taxation and interest rate policy. Whenever there is an inflation in an economy, obviously there is already excess money supply. Due to excess money supply, what happens? My people, whenever they get more and more money into their hand, obviously they will start spending more and more. Obviously the demand automatically increases. Whenever demand is increasing, as a customer, obviously boss, I need that commodity. Why? Because I have more money in my hand, I need to satisfy my human want. Now think from a producer point of view. Whenever demand is increasing all of a sudden, obviously will you increase the price or decrease? I will increase it. One way the demand increased, price increased. Still people are purchasing. Why? There is a excess money supply in an economy. It causes inflation. General price level automatically increases. Now I need to control them. What should I do? Obviously, sir, tax rates will, and government will start spending less. My government expenditures will reduce. Already there is more money supply in an economy. If governments also start spending more, it will inject more money in the economy. My government expenditure should reduce and tax rate should increase. Not only just tax rate should increase, now interest rate should also increase. Now what happens? Suppose earlier, sir, if I deposit money into my bank account, at least I used to get only percentage. Now interest rate increase, sir. Now I will get 4%. Just an example. Automatically deposit bank account FD percentage come and do an FD. Why? Because interest rates are more. Suppose if any person has to take a loan, now interest rates are high. Earlier 6%, now 10%. No, I will not take a loan. Already control that. Government expenditures are based on tax rates and interest rate. Now, sir, deflation. Opposite. Tax rates has to be reduced. We need to push an economy now, and interest rate should be reduced, because of which people will not keep the money. They will take and they will start spend more. Economic activity starts increasing. And moreover, what I will do with government expenditure, I will obviously increase. I will start building roads, dams. My government expenditure starts increasing. So it is like a chain link. All these five elements, whatever we are discussing, now it is like a chain link. GDP, inflation, tax rate, interest rate. When in order to control inflation, obviously we will increase the tax rate, we will increase the interest rate, and government expenditure should reduce. Whenever government expenditure is reducing, interest rates are high, obviously, sir, no one is going to reduce it more, and no one is coming forward to take any loans. And finally comes the exchange rate of the money, that is in short external value of rupee. Now whenever there is external value of rupee high or low, it impacts on my foreign trade, imports and exports. How? Listen, assuming if $1 is equals to 70 rupees. Now when the external value of money is increasing, external values, let me say $1, let me take a random example, is 75 rupees, and it is decreasing 60 rupees. Now what happens? This concept is called as not even it's called as appreciation or depreciation. 70, if it 75, this is called as depreciation. From 70 it becomes 60, it is called as appreciation. Confused? Listen to me. In India, whatever you get for 70 rupees, let's say you will get it. Assuming, sir, I went to McDonald's, I ordered a burger, it is 70 rupees. The same burger in USA is $1. Or in short, I wanted to purchase $1. I went to a money exchanger, he said 70 rupees. Okay, super fine. After 1 week, I went again. I wanted to purchase $1. Now $1 is 75. Lose the value in dollar. External value of it is depreciated. Now I need to pay more money to get one single dollar. Now what happens? This case, in case of depreciation, exports will assuming I had a furniture. Now I need to export my furniture. Earlier, if I export one furniture, I used to get only 70 rupees. But now if I export, I will get 70. Whenever the external value of this, there will be what they have explained it. Same thing. Entire paragraph. Whatever I explained now, tax rate. Okay. See, same concept. Here, always this economic, some high demand expectation. Demand will be high automatically when the demand more and more goods. So whenever we are producing more and more goods, it will increase. Inflation should moderate. It should not all of a sudden increase, or it should all of a sudden decrease. It will affect on demand and profit expectations. Next, tax rate should be always and always low. Interest rate should be always and always low. Exchange rate should be moderate, because it is going to affect on external value, and especially on all those exports and imports. Now, last, in your previous syllabus part, in your old material, whatever the government policies that we used to always give, the policy making process, law making process, was completely cultural, socio practices, political interference, all those elements were there. Even now, same elements are there, but they are only specified in a one single line. Here, cultural institution, macroeconomic, over and parts of the supply side institution. Now even they are completely based on cultural views. Whatever policies that we create, like over of time we come, first we should understand the social practices of. Best example, in farmer strike, why are they doing? Whatever the farm wages, whatever they have amended, not follow, because obviously it is not accepted in society. It is also a factor of culture. Whatever policy the government is also having impact with social issues, and also the land. Let me say, it might not fit for a particular land, or it might fit to a particular land space. Might not be accepted by few people. Might be accepted by few people. Policy formulation and impact transmission process. It is nothing but how exactly the policies are created, how Reserve Bank is going to interfere with respect to monetary things. Now Reserve Bank is going to change their credit policies and government's money availability change, especially through the repo rate, reverse rate, and CRR, SLR policies. It is only an example. In order to create any policy for it matter, policy content, whatever the content which we are preparing, and what purpose are we doing, and which are the institutional which are associated with it, and what are the instruments we need to mainly focus on, like especially when it comes to monetary policy, RBI, CRR, SLR, repo rate, reverse repo rate, and market practices. What are the present market practices, how it will be affected, based on that how the progress will happen. The same things, whatever public policy process were there, now in order to create policy, what are the institutions included, what are the instruments included, what are the content that we need to prepare, and whether it is acceptable or not. The same things: protective policy, restrictive, regulatory, facilitating, sorry. Now what is this protective policy? Simple. India started following restrictive trade practices earlier. In order to protect foreign competitions with India, we started following restrictive. Now same to same thing, something called as this protective policy was only implemented during the mid-50s. Now restrictive policy, wherein we are restricting to do something. No boss, you cannot do that, you cannot do this. They are called as restrictive policies, especially in India. Let me give you this examples. In my class I would have said this when I was doing this Competition Act, especially. Before Competition Act in India, we had something called as Monopoly and Restrictive Trade Practices Act 1969. Now what is the main rule? No one can make a dominant holding in India, and no one can be like a monopoly. No boss, we will not support that. In order to restrict those practices, we had MRTP. Now that MRTP has been repealed, now Competition Act has taken over that, and Commission of India is existing. See here, it is going to restrict what to be done and what not to be done. Another best example is TROI, Telephone Regulatory and Authority of India. Regulatory policy, I will say the rules and regulations. You should follow that. RBI, SEBI, IRDA, regulatory policies. Last one, facilitating or development. That is for the development of micro, small and medium enterprises. And next comes the same concept which is already existing. No, but liberalization. I need to explain this little. What is this? Sir, I said you, we are following completely restrictive trade practices. Now we need to liberalize our economy, but also allow the private participation in India, not only for the customer oriented goods. Yes boss, I said you for each and everything earlier we should take a permission. Many of industrial, especially, they were completely reserved for a government PSUs only, but now we need to liberalize them. We need to provide more and more opportunities for the private parties, and we should also make sure that whatever the reservations are only made for PSU, we have to reduce it, and we should also encourage for the foreign funds. See here, this table is going to be the important. Rather than this explanation, whatever I have said, the same to same thing is given here. Now, the list of industries reserved solely for public sector. Earlier, there were 18 industries which was completely reserved for a government. Which are those? Iron and steel, heavy plants, machinery, telecommunication, tele-equipment, mineral oils, minerals, air transport services, electricity generation and distribution, so and so, blah, 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 blah. But now, there are only and only industries which is completely reserved for government. Which are those? Defense, aircrafts and warship manufacturing, atomic energy generation, and railway transport. And even now railway is also open for the FDI, foreign direct investments, and even defense industry up to 74%. But only the railway transport, the railways in India, atomic energy generation, and defense aircrafts and warship. Kindly do remember, this is given in your institute material. Even though now railway is open for FDI, even defense is also open for FDI, but still your institute material says only 3 industries are completely de-reserved, but earlier it was 18. Now, industrial licensing, for earlier for each and everything license should be taken, but now only for few, for all those hazardous manufacturing, explosive manufacturing, chemical manufacturing. See here, industrial licensing by the central government has been almost abolished, except in case of a few hazardous, environment sensitive industries such as alcohol manufacturing, cigarette manufacturing, industrial explosives, aerospace, drugs and pharmaceuticals. Only for these few compulsory you should take a permission. Rest all you can register and you can start the business. Now, the requirement for the investments of large scale households like patent rights, intellectual property rights, especially all those laws were not that given importance. But now international patents, all those are given importance, and especially in order to cut down that monopoly power. Now, the Indian industry scenarios. Now this paragraph will be important. They might ask you the question. See here, Indian industry scenario has also been characterized by a large standing policy for reserving products for certain items for small scale sector. Earlier, the small scale sector has got a reservation. Almost 800 items was completely reserved for a small scale. But now, after 1970s, that has been limitized. Now, all those are not completely reserved for a small scale. Which are those best examples? Here, garments, shoes, toys, and they are highly exportable. What happened earlier? First, let me say the earlier scenario. We had something called as a restriction. You can only produce this much. You can only produce that much. Why? Because small scale industries investments were completely less. If at all you exceed the investment, then we never used to give you the permission. And only for the small scale industry, this 800 items was reserved. And those reservation comes under, let me say, garments, shoes, toys, and all that had an export potential. Now, and we only used to provide only this much investment to be made, and this only the products you need to produce. Even though we had high potential exports, we never used to support them until 1970s. Later on, was not only the 800 items, then we cut down that, and also the investments was given even for them. Now you can invest more, so produce them, you can also export them. Earlier we had a huge demand for them to export, but we cannot produce more. Why? Because I have been restricted to invest only so much. If I don't invest, I cannot produce more. I cannot expand my industry. Only these products can be produced only by small scale industry. Now if at all I am investing more, I will not fit under a small scale. Then if I am not a small scale, I cannot produce those items, and which has got a huge demand even for exports. So these were the problems. We cut down the problems now. We have restricted. Now let me say all those restrictions has been taken out. Complete de-reservation of 800 items. Only 2 items are completely reserved for small scale now. Liberalization. This paragraph will be important. Now the liberalization is not only given for the PSUs. Now majority of the customer oriented goods, even related to FMCG, even related to telecommunication, automobile, insurance, banking, even these are given liberalization. Now even private parties can also come and start them. Now especially this fast moving consumer goods, FMCG has gained more importance after 1990, especially due to liberalization policies. And privatization remains same to same. Whatever the informations were given, types of privatization remains the same, not to worry about it. Then FDI, that is inwards. Whatever we receive, that is inwards. And over there they have explained FDI can be entered by two different ways. One is automatic route approval, second one is through government permission. That concept, kindly keep this in mind. They might ask you the question, but in the present syllabus part they have no specified that. Remember this, FDI can be entered into India through two ways. One is automatic route approval, second one is through a government route, something we had called as Foreign Investment Promotion Board. It has been scrapped. Remember, Foreign Investment Promotion Board, FIPB, has been scrapped. It is no more existing. To India, FDI can be entered through only two ways: automatic route approval and government approval. But the information is not given in your new syllabus. But keep this in your mind. Same to same, 26, 49, 51, few industries are 74, restrictions are given, and another information which is also missing here with compared to other your old material. In India, if at all you need to enter through FDI route, either you can be a wholly subsidiary, okay, Indian company, or you establish a subsidiary company in India, or you need a franchising. So these are the another two methods, two ways and two methods. They were completely existing in your old material. It was given methods either by subsidiary company or franchising. Ways, government approval or automatic route approval. These information are not given in. And same, which are prohibited, the same to same list is there. FII is also same. The only thing I need to explain is investments from India abroad. That is, now there are many who are investing their funds into other nation. That is, we are investing into other nation in a form of foreign direct investments. That is called as investments. That is outwards. Outwards foreign direct investment. Best examples they have given here. Bharti Airtel invested 978.92 millions of their wholly owned subsidiary in Mauritius. In November 2019, PVR Cinemas have extended their chain into Sri Lanka. like this. Even this Sun Pharma has also joined their hands with Chinese system medical holding into a mainland China's, all those things. Now even Indians have also invested into some other nation, that is outwards foreign direct investments here. Up to 40% it has increased. Now the RBI, the data released by the Reserve Bank of India shows that the investments by Indian firms into foreign countries in January 2020 has raised nearly up to 40%. That is all like 0.10 billion here basically. This is the one more additional topic which has come, is outwards foreign direct investments, inward foreign direct investment and outwards. Earlier we used to only explain called as FDI, foreign direct investment, and the concept of NRI, OCI, person of Indian origin, post-independence public policy procedures, FEMA, FERA, public policy process, law-making process, the entire thing is not there in your syllabus now. From chapter 4 only are the elements. Liberalization given importance, privatization given importance, and FDI, FII, and this out or indirect investment given importance, and the initial phase, monetary policy, fiscal policy, are the areas where you concentrate more. These are the chota mota changes which are there in your material which is applicable